Hello, everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Anime Octopus. Today, we're diving into an exciting topic. What if FemGoku and Gohan were forced to fight for freedom? Disclaimer: this content is created solely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any of the anime footage used in this video. All rights and credits belong to the respective creators and copyright holders. Let's get started. Gohan exhaled deeply as she rolled onto her side, listening to the steady snores of her husband, Chico, beside her. She marveled at how he could sleep so soundly in such stifling heat. Eventually, she gave up on sleep, got out of bed, and headed to the kitchen, recalling that there was lemonade Chico had prepared in the fridge. As she walked down the hall, she paused, smiling softly at the door to her son's room. She slipped inside, watching her son as he slept, almost in disbelief that it had already been 4 years since she became a mother. Chico had changed the day she announced her pregnancy. Once, they had trained together daily, but now, Chico had taken a job in the city. He often returned home frustrated, berating her for doing nothing, though her days revolved around caring for their son. Wasn't that enough? She knew Chico wanted the perfect wife, but she wasn't certain she could meet his expectations. She gently tucked Gohan in before heading back down the hall. As she reached the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, nostalgia washed over her. She missed those carefree days of camping under the stars with Bulma or training with Krillin at Master Roshi's. She even missed her failed attempts at challenging Piccolo. Not that she would trade Gohan for anything, but her life had become monotonous. Was this to be her fate, wife to a man consumed by his career? Or could she still carve her own path? The clock reminded her it was late, and she figured she should try to get some sleep. Tomorrow was a big day. Chico was unaware that she planned to take Gohan to visit Master Roshi. She hoped to run into Krillin. It had been so long, and she was certain they'd adore her son as much as she did. Perhaps the trip would rekindle a bit of the adventure she missed. The next morning, as soon as Chico left, Gohan moved quickly, getting Gohan ready and calling for Nimbus. Her son's nervousness was evident as they flew, but she remained hopeful. She wondered how he might thrive if allowed to train, though Chico's dream of Gohan becoming a scholar was difficult for her to envision. When they arrived at Kame House, she spotted her former master, who greeted her with a characteristic glance and a chuckle. "Gohan, it's been a while." Seconds later, Krillin appeared, followed by Bulma. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said to Bulma, who responded with a laugh. "Oh, I was just stopping by." Bulma's eyes drifted to the little figure hiding behind Gohan's legs. "And who's this?" "This is Gohan, my son," Gohan replied, lifting him up. As everyone looked on in surprise, Gohan shyly said, "Hello, everyone." Bulma beamed. "Such good manners." "That's thanks to Chico," Gohan replied with a smile. Roshi eyed Gohan curiously. "So, when's he going to start training?" Gohan had hoped her master wouldn't broach the topic. As Gohan ran off to play by the ocean, she forced a smile. "Chico wants him to be a scholar," she explained, though she found the idea difficult to accept. Noticing her unease, Krillin asked, "Are you all right, Gohan?" Once the others returned inside, Gohan finally spoke. "Krillin, do you think I married Chico too soon?" Krillin reddened, glancing at Gohan. "Well, you did get engaged and married in one day." She sighed. "It's nothing like I expected. Chico's changed, he's no longer the boy I once knew. He wants me to be a stay-at-home mom, but I miss training. What should I do?" Before Krillin could respond, they felt a powerful energy approaching. "What is that?" he exclaimed. Gohan's eyes widened as she sensed it. A figure descended, a tall man with hair reaching past his knees and a peculiar outfit, a tail coiled around his waist. His intense gaze locked onto her. "So, here you are, Kakura. I was beginning to think you were dead." Gohan stepped forward, bewildered. Who are you?" She noticed Krillin moving Gohan toward the house as Bulma and Roshi came outside, drawn by the commotion. The man frowned. Don't you remember? You had a mission here, he stated, still ticked to find this planet in working order. Mission? I don't know who you are, but what are you even talking about? Gohan said, completely confused. The man sighed. You must have hit your head pretty hard if you don't remember, Kakura. He was watching her, but keeping his eyes on everyone else. You were sent to this planet as a baby. You're one of the last of our kind, a Saiyan warrior of planet Vegeta. Saiyan, warrior? She was completely floored by this information. Then she remembered another word he had used. There were a limited number of them. Why? Yes, but observing this planet, it seems you've forgotten your mission. His gaze met hers, noticing the curiosity in her eyes regarding the nature of the mission. He gave a wry smile. You were assigned to eradicate all life here. Our Saiyan business is in preparing planets for sale. She stared at him, stunned by this revelation about herself. That can't be. And that's not the half of it. I suppose introductions are in order, he muttered. I'm Raditz, your older brother. She shook her head, disbelief evident on her face. This isn't right. Raditz chuckled, looking around until his eyes landed on a small boy with a tail. It appears you've given birth. Quite extraordinary. He moved closer, lifting the boy by the tail. Strong lad, he could grow into a formidable warrior. Gohan turned sharply, worry filling her eyes as she watched her son in the hands of a stranger. Raditz, put my son down. Raditz glared but smirked. I'm merely being a responsible uncle, Kakura. His gaze softened as he regarded the boy. Seeing a child with a Saiyan tail again was a rare sight. I didn't expect this planet would serve as a suitable breeding ground for us. I'll need to inform the prince when we return. Return? Gohan exclaimed, bewildered. What are you even talking about? The Saiyan man grinned. Did you really think I came here just to say hello? Excuse me, but Gohan isn't going anywhere with you. Krillin interjected, stepping forward, only to be thrown back with a powerful blow to his chest. My power far surpasses anything on this planet. It would be wise to come with me now, Raditz warned, still holding his nephew. Or would you prefer I leave this world in ruins, sister? Gohan looked at her son, her instincts compelling her to act, yet she fell as Raditz struck her in the stomach. Please, let my son go. Raditz laughed. Why would I do that? A boy like him deserves to grow up among his kind. He watched as his sister lost consciousness, then slung her over his shoulder. His nephew began to cry. Stop that immediately, he commanded. A Saiyan warrior does not cry. But Daddy says I'm going to be a scholar, Gohan whispered timidly. Raditz chuckled as he flew toward his ship, with an extra pod prepared for the journey. A waste of potential. What's your name, boy? I'm Gohan, the boy replied softly. Raditz smirked, seeing an opportunity. Well, Gohan, haven't you ever wanted an adventure? Yes. Gohan's face lit up, his timid nature giving way to excitement. They soon reached the pods. Raditz placed Kakura in one and sealed it. You can travel with me. We'll explore planets along the way. Yay! Gohan settled on his uncle's lap, imagining the journey ahead. He wondered if his father would approve, though he knew this would be a unique experience with his mother. Both pods shot into the sky, leaving Earth behind. Back on Earth, Bulma finished recounting the events to Chico. I'm truly sorry. We tried, but we couldn't stop them. My wife and son were abducted by an alien, and that's all you can say? Chico retorted, his frustration evident. Bulma sighed. Remember, Gohan is also Saiyan. They're called Scions, apparently. Chico collapsed onto the couch, grappling with the enormity of the situation. So now my son is some alien hybrid? Chico, Gohan is part human, part Saiyan, Bulma replied, beginning to feel exasperated. How does Gohan put up with this? No, Gohan is just a kind-hearted little boy. He met her eyes. Did Gohan put you up to this? Our marriage may have had its challenges, but she didn't need to fabricate a story and kidnap our son if she wanted out. Bulma shot him a glare, her patience snapping. Gokin would never do such a thing. If you truly knew her, you'd understand that. And besides, you were the one who rushed into this marriage. Because I believed we shared the same values. But she refused to grow up. Chico declared angrily. When she returns, I'll file for custody. My son deserves better than to be turned into a fighter like her. Bulma's voice rose in defense of her friend. How dare you call her worthless? She saved Earth more than once, she even won prize money at her last tournament. And that money fed her while she was pregnant. Chico yelled back. Maybe you never deserved her, Bulma shot, storming out. She hoped her friend would be all right, wherever she was. Meanwhile, in a distant place, Vegeta paced before glancing at Nappa. So, what are your thoughts on Raditz bringing back his sibling? Nappa asked, leaning casually against the wall. Vegeta halted, contemplating. As long as she's useful, I don't care. He had no patience for another low-class Saiyan, even if Kakarot was the last female of their kind. In his eyes, Raditz's bloodline promised no appealing features. He smirked as he surveyed a list of planets, selecting one that promised a bit of destruction. Raditz wouldn't return for a while, and he could use some entertainment. Gokin slowly opened her eyes, feeling a bit disoriented. Where was she? She looked around, realizing she'd been inside some strange pod. It felt like she had just stepped into a futuristic movie. As she got her bearings, memories started to return, especially her worry about her little boy, Gohan. She had to find him. Stepping out of the pod, Gokin felt a rush of determination. She didn't pay much attention to the guards nearby as she made her way forward, sensing Gohan's energy. She was certain that Raditz, her brother, was involved and might be trying to use Gohan as a bargaining tool. The idea frustrated her. Family was supposed to be there to help, not to complicate things. As she walked, some of the soldiers began to take notice, gathering around her as if she might cause trouble. But Gokin stayed focused. She was determined to find her son, so she called out, "Please, let me pass. I need to find my son." Just then, she saw someone approaching, a man wearing armor, with a serious expression that caught her attention. There was something about him that felt powerful and familiar. He came closer, and she couldn't help but wonder who he was. Vegeta, the man in armor, had just returned from a mission. He noticed the commotion and decided to check it out, figuring something unusual was happening. As he got closer, he spotted Gokin, who stood out from the crowd with her determined stance and unique appearance. "What's going on here?" he asked, curiosity piqued. "My son. I'm looking for him," Gokin replied, her voice soft but resolute. Vegeta nodded, taking a moment to consider. He found her worry sincere and decided to help. "Why don't you come with me? I know this place well, and I can guide you." Gokin felt a wave of gratitude and agreed, following him. "Thank you. I'm Gokin, and my son is Gohan." As they walked, the two were mostly quiet, but there was an understanding between them. Gokin was focused on reuniting with her son, and Vegeta was intrigued by her determination. Finally, they turned a corner and spotted Raditz, who seemed to be in conversation with someone. Gokin felt a surge of relief when she spotted Gohan, safe and sound, nearby. "Mom!" Gohan called out, running to her. Gokin's heart lifted as she knelt down to hug him. Raditz, watching the reunion, managed a smile. "See? He's perfectly fine." Gokin smiled back, feeling relieved and grateful to have Gohan back with her. Vegeta scrutinized the young child before him. His suspicions seemed validated as he observed the child's tail curling around his mother's wrist. Rage simmered within him at the thought of Raditz taking a woman like her as his mate. "Silence!" Gokin retorted sharply. "You abducted me and my son." "It was the only way to bring you here," Raditz countered. "You belong with your own kind." Vegeta was puzzled. What did Raditz mean by that? And why, all of a sudden, did you decide you needed me here? I won't be clearing planets for you, she declared, clutching her son protectively. She shrank back, sensing the unsettling gaze of the bald man watching her like prey. Kakarot, Raditz began. Vegeta's body tensed. This woman wasn't Raditz's partner. She was his sister, a Saiyan herself. A thought crossed his mind: she could give him an heir. Still, he would need to evaluate if she was worth the effort. A quick conquest was tempting, but he resolved to approach her more strategically. Nappa stepped forward, clearly with his own intentions. But Vegeta's sudden snarl stopped him in his tracks. The elite Saiyan glanced back, noting Vegeta's agitated tail. Vegeta? Goku noticed the man who brought her here was visibly upset. Only now did she see his tail, marking him as one of her kind, a Saiyan. Holding her son close, she approached him cautiously. Thank you for helping me find my son. Vegeta held her gaze, his expression softening slightly as she smiled. Let us retire to our quarters, he instructed the group. I need to be rid of this armor, and the woman needs a fitting. Confusion clouded Goku's mind as they began moving. She wanted to object, but soon found herself ushered through the hallways. They arrived at a suite with a central common room and 4 adjoining bedrooms. Come along, Kakarot. I'll show you your room, Raditz offered. Her gaze drifted back to Vegeta. Although the hangar was behind them, her guard remained up. Following Raditz, she entered a small room furnished with a second bed, presumably for her son, Gohan. I won't kill anyone for you, she stated, setting her son down. Raditz regarded her thoughtfully. So, what do you think of the prince? What? Goku asked, momentarily bewildered as her thoughts flickered to the bald Saiyan who made her uneasy. The prince, Prince Vegeta, Raditz clarified, observing her reaction. She stiffened, realizing Vegeta's status. She had spoken to him with such casualness, yet he hadn't seemed to mind. Now she understood why the others deferred to him. He's very serious, she finally responded. Years ago, she might have found his looks captivating, but her past with Chico had left her cautious. The only lasting good from that relationship was her son. She couldn't risk letting another man in, no matter how compelling his presence. Is that all? Raditz pressed, hoping she might be open to a Saiyan mate. I didn't ask to be brought here, she replied, helping Gohan remove his armor. If you want me to warm up to your friends, then give me some space. Gohan looked up at her as Raditz exhaled in frustration and left the room. Mom, why don't you like Uncle Raditz? Gohan asked softly. Goku paused, a look of hesitation crossing her face. Gohan, she murmured, considering whether to confide in him about their situation. It's complicated, she finally said, gently tucking him into bed. Why don't you try to get some sleep? Noting the dark circles under his eyes, she sensed he hadn't rested properly. As he turned over, Goku began humming a familiar tune, one Grandpa Gohan had sung to her as a child. Her soft humming transitioned to singing as Gohan drifted into sleep. Rest, my child, the night is near. Dreams of jungles calm and clear. Lay down your weary head. For when you wake, they'll all be dead. That last line had always puzzled her, and Chico disliked the song, but it was a rare link to the man who had raised her. Once Gohan was asleep, she moved toward her own bed, her stomach growling. Reluctant as she was to encounter the bald man, hunger won out. She stood up, realizing she'd need her strength if she was to protect Gohan. As she entered the common room, she overheard the bald man complaining, "Why not, Vegeta?" All 3 men turned to look at her as she sighed. Is there anything to eat here? She asked. There's food in the mess hall, he replied, eyeing her. I'll go with her, Raditz offered, but Goku shook her head. Gohan knows you, Raditz, and as much as I dislike you, I'd prefer he had someone familiar around if he wakes up, she said. Just tell me where it is, and I'll manage. Vegeta fixed her with a hard stare. Nappa or I will escort you. There are unsavory characters around here, and we don't need you being taken again. She rolled her eyes. I've already been kidnapped once. Raditz quickly moved forward, covering her mouth. Come on, sister, Gohan will be fine with Vegeta and Nappa here, he whispered, dragging her out of the room. Are you trying to get yourself killed? I only stated the truth, Goku shot back. But he's the prince. Nobody talks back to him, Raditz muttered, nervous. Good to know my brother's a coward, she retorted as they neared the mess hall. No, I just don't have a death wish, he replied under his breath. Meanwhile, Vegeta was still staring at the door, feeling more intrigued than angry. Nappa growled beside him, the nerve of her. Just let me have one night. No. You won't touch her, Vegeta interrupted sternly. Give her time to adjust before you scare her off. Vegeta was surprised by her defiance. He wasn't used to being spoken to like that, and he couldn't deny it was refreshing. She still deserves some punishment, Nappa growled. Nappa, you will do nothing, Vegeta snapped. Besides, we have more important matters. Such as? Nappa grumbled, visibly annoyed. Training, Vegeta replied coldly. You and Raditz have been slipping. Tomorrow morning, I expect you ready. He couldn't fault them too much, as they had reached their power limits, but that didn't mean they couldn't still serve as practice. Nappa growled. Fine, he muttered, stalking off to his quarters, although he clearly resented leaving her alone. Vegeta watched him go, sighing before retreating to his own room. As he stripped off his armor and pulled on a pair of spandex pants, his thoughts drifted back to Goku. Her Saiyan name, Kakura, suited her far better than the human one she was using. How, he mused, could someone with her looks and strength share blood with Raditz? He smirked, thinking about his plan. Her resilience and confidence were intriguing, but her true power remained unknown. And as for her son, that would need investigating. Vegeta chuckled to himself, already envisioning her reaction once she fully realized who he was. She'd come to him, willingly, of that he was certain. Vegeta growled in frustration. Nappa was late again. Approaching the elite warrior's quarters, he could hear him snoring loudly, prompting Vegeta to scowl. Realizing he'd be training solo, he continued down the corridor. Passing Raditz's room, he noticed the third-class warrior was also sound asleep. Vegeta rolled his eyes. He wouldn't get anything useful from him, either. Resigned, he left their quarters and proceeded down the hallway. With the base still quiet at this early hour, it was a perfect time to train alone. Entering the training room, Vegeta spotted the containers filled with Saibaman seedlings. Taking one, he made his way to the main area but froze in surprise. Kakura was there. He watched her as she demonstrated a punch to her young son, a small grin tugging at his lips. Didn't expect anyone else to be up this early. Goku spun around, startled to see Vegeta watching her. I usually start my training this early, she replied, aware her husband, Chico, often complained she wasn't there to make breakfast before he left for work. Vegeta glanced at her son. The boy's form is solid. How long has he been training? Only recently, she admitted, catching Vegeta's curious look. My husband doesn't approve of it. She avoided mentioning Chico further, not eager to discuss her Earth life. Vegeta's expression hardened. And you simply allowed that? He asked, his frustration barely contained as he watched her look down at her son again. Chico works hard for us, he expects me to support his wishes, Goku said softly, feeling she'd already shared more than she should. The prince took hold of her arm, turning her to face him. You're Saiyan. If he can't respect that, what good is he? He was all I had, she replied, feeling her defenses waver under his intense gaze. But while I'm here, I figured I'd bend the rules a little. Vegeta smirked. So, you've wanted to train the boy all along? He was intrigued. Do you know his power level? Goku looked puzzled. What does that mean? She was unfamiliar with the concept. With a sigh, Vegeta picked up a scouter. This device measures usable power levels. Placing it over his eye, he activated the scanner, unsurprised by the boy's modest reading. He'll need considerable training to reach a respectable level. Goku nodded, watching as Vegeta scanned her next. What? She asked when he frowned. Your power level is below your brother's, Vegeta remarked bluntly, understanding now why he had avoided her initially. With that level, she posed no challenge. Goku shrugged. Well, back on Earth, I was one of the strongest. Determination sparked in her eyes. Just means I have to push myself further. Vegeta was surprised by her resolve. Nappa and Raditz were sleeping away despite their higher power levels, yet here she was, striving to improve. You can observe me for a while, if you'd like. What's your power level? She asked, curious. Smirking, he seized the chance to boast. You're around 500. I'm at 18,000, he chuckled at her reaction. How much training did it take to reach that level? She inquired. Vegeta's grin widened. I'm a natural. I've always been strong. But you couldn't have started that strong as a child, she said skeptically. I've grown, but I've always been in the 1,000 range, he replied, noticing her interest. Care for a sparring session? He was curious to see her abilities firsthand, perhaps she had untapped potential. Goku smiled, taking a defensive stance. Bring it. Vegeta felt a spark of excitement. Few dared challenge him, but this woman seemed unpredictable. Her stance differed from his, which piqued his curiosity about her training. They sized each other up, each waiting for the other to make the first move, a rare experience for him. So, Kakura, planning to make a move? He asked, a grin playing on his lips. She grinned back. Knowing your power, it wouldn't be wise to rush in blindly. He chuckled. Fair point. He launched the first attack, only to be surprised at her agility as she sidestepped. You've had proper training. She dodged low, attempting to sweep his legs, but he leapt over her. It was essential for survival. Vegeta shifted, maneuvering to her back, but she spun around, landing a punch to his face. He didn't flinch, yet he was genuinely intrigued. Goku tried to get him to release her arm, but instead, he pulled her closer, intending to playfully nudge her with his knee. However, she cleverly slipped between his legs, making him let go. You have good instincts, he complimented. I learned from the best. She replied. While on the ground, she quickly swiped at his feet, causing him to lose his balance. She jumped up, but he caught her arms and gently flipped them, placing himself above her. As he looked down, he realized they were in a rather silly position. She was giggling, and he couldn't help but feel a little shy. Suddenly, his hands became unsteady, giving her an opportunity to escape. Goku playfully pushed him away and grinned. Looks like I got the upper hand. He looked surprised and then smiled back at her. You sure did. Goku gazed up at him, noting that he seemed pleased. A warm feeling spread through her, and her cheeks flushed. Vegeta? Yes? He asked, intrigued. Could you please get off me? Goku laughed, noticing his cheeks turn a bit red. He quickly stood up and moved to grab the scouter, eager to check her energy level. Just as he was about to take a reading, Dodoria walked in and noticed the boy. What do we have here? A new friend? Vegeta prepared to explain, but Dodoria picked the boy up. Kakura stepped forward, but Vegeta gently stopped her. Don't rush in, we need to be careful, he advised. But Gohan. She began, her motherly instincts kicking in. If you go to him now, it could make things complicated, Vegeta warned. Instead of stepping back, she moved closer, catching Dodoria's attention. So, this little one is special to you? The alien inquired. Gohan. She called out to her son, wanting him to be safe. Dodoria smiled mischievously. How about I return him in a funny way? Let him go, Dodoria. Vegeta insisted firmly. The alien chuckled. And what are you going to do about it? He teased. Meanwhile, Gohan had started to squirm a bit. He looked at his mother, seeing her worried expression. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Leave my mom alone." Dodoria dropped the boy in surprise. "You'll regret that," he exclaimed. But instead of being frightened, Gohan stood tall, determined. "Don't mess with my family." Seeing Gohan's bravery, Goken rushed over, scooping him up in her arms. "Honey, are you okay?" she asked, checking to make sure he was fine. Vegeta activated the scouter, astonished to discover that both Goken and Gohan's energy levels had increased. Kakarot now registered at approximately 900, while Gohan reached an impressive 1200. He marveled at their rapid progress. They showed great potential as warriors. Vegeta turned his gaze toward Kakarot as he removed the scouter. If he had any doubts before, they had been dispelled. He intended to pursue a friendship with her, hoping for a future where they could grow stronger together. His stomach grumbled, bringing him back to reality. "I suspect the boy is hungry." Gohan twisted in his mother's arms. "I'm starving, Mommy." She laughed down at him. "Very well, let's head to the mess hall for a snack." "I'd like to join you, if you don't mind," Vegeta offered, hoping to get to know them better. "I don't see why not," Goken replied. "But be warned, I have quite the appetite." Vegeta chuckled. "What Saiyan doesn't?" As they strolled down the corridor, the prince's stomach growled again, making Goken laugh. "I think you're the one who's truly hungry, Vegeta." He turned a bit red but didn't say anything else as they made their way to the mess hall. Meanwhile, Nappa looked around the common room, feeling a bit anxious. "Do you really think she ran off?" he asked Raditz. "I did take her away, so she could be anywhere," Raditz replied. The thought of Kakarot wandering around made him uneasy. He wanted her to be safe. Nappa sighed, realizing he might miss his chance to talk to her. He had hoped to spend some time with her after Vegeta left, but by the time he woke up, both she and Gohan were already gone. "I'll talk to Vegeta when he gets back. He might have some thoughts on this," Nappa started just as the door opened. Raditz opened his mouth to speak, only to stop when he saw his sister enter with Vegeta, who was unexpectedly holding Gohan. "The boy has great potential. We should help him train more," Vegeta said enthusiastically. Goken sighed. "But he has just started, Vegeta. I don't think he's ready for that yet." The prince looked down at the boy in his arms. "What do you think, young one? Was Dodoria a real challenge?" Gohan shook his head. "He was quite weak, Mr. Vegeta." The prince chuckled. "See, Kakarot? The boy is eager to improve." Goken smiled, feeling a sense of pride in her son's enthusiasm for training. "I suppose that's fine. As long as I can find some time to train as well. Then meet me in the common room each morning. I can take you to the training room, and we can work with the boy. And then have some practice ourselves," Vegeta suggested, not noticing the curious looks from Nappa and Raditz. Goken giggled. "So, you're inviting me to a friendly match, Vegeta?" "You won't be so lucky next time," the prince playfully replied, a spark of excitement in his demeanor. "We'll see about that," Goken said as she gently placed Gohan down. She looked at her gi, realizing it was quite worn. "It looks like I might need some new clothes." "I'll arrange for someone to take your measurements," the prince said as she walked away. Nappa frowned, confused by Vegeta's friendly attitude. This wasn't like him, he rarely complimented anyone. What was happening? She was a third-class warrior, and there was no reason for Vegeta to be so friendly with her. He felt he had to put an end to this. The Prince of all Scions shouldn't be getting too close to someone of her status. Meanwhile, Raditz smirked. He had doubted her abilities, yet she had caught the prince's attention. If only their parents could see this, a third-class Saiyan forming a bond with a member of the royal family. He noticed Nappa's frustration and knew it wouldn't be easy. Raditz decided to help his sister however he could, understanding what was at stake. Over the following weeks, Vegeta kept an eye on Kakura and the boy during their training. Their skills were steadily improving, and he found himself genuinely impressed. Thoughts of how to approach her filled his mind, yet every time he got close, he hesitated. The prince wondered if his feelings were something more, but he shook off the thought. "Vegeta?" Gokun's voice interrupted his thoughts. He blinked, refocusing. "What?" Tonight, he felt determined to make a move. "I wanted to see if you would like to spar with me for a bit," Goku said. "Is something bothering you?" She noticed he had been a bit distracted lately. "No," he replied, though his stomach growled, reminding him he hadn't eaten. He didn't want his hunger to interfere with their time together. Goku giggled. "I think that means it's lunchtime." She was about to go find Gohan, but her son was happily occupied with Raditz, and she was grateful for that. She still felt uncomfortable with the way he looked at her. The prince smiled, realizing this was a good chance to spend time with Goku. "Why don't we head to the mess hall?" She nodded, and they left together. He appreciated Raditz for keeping Gohan entertained. "The food here is okay, but I miss the dishes from home," Goku said, reminiscing about rice balls, noodles, and pizza. Planet Vegeta had good food. "I must admit this place is an improvement." Vegeta raised an eyebrow. "Is that why you didn't want to leave Earth?" "No, it was my home," Goku replied, crossing her arms and looking away. Vegeta sighed, realizing he might have made things awkward. "It's just confusing for me. We all had missions, but yours took a different path. You can't blame me for being curious, Kakura." He hoped to smooth over the conversation. That's all for today, everyone. If you enjoyed the content, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate your support. Stay tuned for more from Anime Octopus.